Doug Ford is no Rob Ford. They look a bit the same. They have the same mom and dad. And that's about it. That's it. Doug Ford is not a populist. He despises the little people. At least he says so. He doesn't champion them. He's been hanging out with the fancy people now. The folks who hated his brother, called his brother fat. I mean, look at this headline from the Toronto Star. The paper that mercilessly mocked his brother, hounded his brother, paid people cash so they secretly filmed them on their cell phones in private homes and private places to embarrass them. Doug Ford loves being loved by the powerful people who hate him. He sort of hates the little people, the people who used to be called Ford Nation, but really aren't anymore. They didn't leave him, the people. He left them, and he stabbed them in the heart on the way to the Toronto Star's editorial board.
We have, a bunch of yahoos out in the front of Queen's Park sitting there protesting that the place isn't open, as they're breaking the law.
Yahoos who are stupid.
And as for the organizers, something, guys, I don't get it. I just don't get it. If we weren't so backlogged on MRIs, I'd send you to the MRI to get your brain scanned, because I don't think there's anything in there.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like Rob Ford, does it? That sounds like the Toronto Star mocking Rob Ford. Except the words are coming out of Doug Ford's mouth. Doug Ford isn't the type to cut up his little perk cards. He's not ending the gravy train. When have you ever heard him even use that phrase anymore? He's retired it. No, he's not shutting down the gravy train. He's shutting down mom and pop businesses. Restaurants, bars, theaters, gyms, whatever. Rob Ford fought for the little guy. Doug Ford fights against the little guy. Oh, it's for your own good, you see. And Doug Ford has an anger and a rage that Rob Ford never showed towards the people. What a disappointment. And I say this is a guy who went on TV, the most watched episode in Sun News Network history, to praise the brothers. But really, now that I think about it, I wasn't really praising Doug Ford. I really didn't know much about him at the time. It was Rob Ford I knew, and it shows. So we have an Ontario Conservative government that isn't conserving anything really. Look at this. Doug Ford says the Liberal government is amazing. And she says, Chrystia Freeland says that Doug Ford is her therapist. It's a lovely friendship, isn't it? Doug Ford isn't loyal to Ford Nation or the Conservatives. He's got no time for them. He's loyal to his new friends in the Media Party, in the Liberal Party. He's not going to campaign for the Conservatives against Trudeau. How could he? Why would he? He's on their gravy train now. He's the conductor. Why would he derail it? What a disappointment. But really, where's a Conservative to go? I personally know of a number of Conservative MPPs who are upset with how pro-Liberal Ford is, but put aside the partisan part. They're just upset with Ford's second wave of lockdowns, his complete deference to experts like Theresa Tam and the dozen mini Theresa Tams salted throughout the government of Ontario. There are a grand total of 34 people in all of Ontario, population 14.5 million, 34 people on ventilators. There are almost 3,000 acute care beds with ventilators for COVID patients. So each ventilator patient has 100 hospital beds to themselves. Here's a graph showing how many people in Ontario have tested positive on any given day. And you bet it's skyrocketing. Oh, yes. But the number of people in the hospital, it just isn't skyrocketing. They're not getting sick, or at least not very sick. No wonder the media keeps talking about cases, not actual illnesses. You see, half of those cases are false positives. So says the government itself.
And in fact, if you're testing in a population that doesn't have very much COVID, you'll get false positives almost half the time.
So who's going to criticize Doug Ford and his unscientific lockdowns and his bans and his rules and his regulations and his dismissive smear against the people? Who? The Liberal Party? They want to go even harder against the people. Same with the NDP. They love this. This is the big spending, big borrowing, big taxing, socialist utopia they always dreamed about. The eco-nuts love this too. They shut down the economy as they always wanted to do. The government unions love it. They're essential. They get paid no matter what. They get paid not to work. Private businesses are shut down. The political class hasn't been touched by these lockdowns. None of Doug Ford's new friends have been impacted in any way. And you don't seriously think he follows his own rules about social distancing or masks or not connecting households, do you? I mean, do you really? Do you really? So what's the alternative? I see Maxime Bernier is running in a federal by-election in North Toronto. I like him, but he's going to be lucky to get 10% of the vote there. Sorry, I wish it weren't so. I wish he'd win, but even if he did, he's federal, of course. He's not provincial. Provincially, I see nothing other than a handful of conservative backbenchers too timid to speak out seriously. Just total submission and compliance in that caucus. Very obedient. Except last night, I see that Jim Karahalios, a gadfly in both the federal and provincial conservative parties, and his wife, Belinda, a conservative MPP who has been ejected from Doug Ford's caucus, they were talking about starting a new political party.
So on Friday, right before the Thanksgiving weekend, at the end of day, Elections Ontario sent us formal documentation, and they approved the name of a new political party, the New Blue Party of Ontario. And we've now received the okay to use that name for a political party. And we'll either have to collect 1,000 signatures from people across Ontario who are eligible to vote in a general election and submit that to Elections Ontario to get approved. There's also a possibility that we can work with some other smaller parties in Ontario that already exist and see if there would be a merger of some sorts to speed up the process. And that's help is on the way. So people have reached out to us, said, you can't stop, you got to run again, Belinda. Yes. You guys need to together not give up. And so that's the solution, creating a new party in Ontario, because the Ontario PC Party, there's no democracy inside of it.
And they say that Randy Hillier, an outspoken conservative MP, also kicked out of the caucus. Well, who knows? He might join them too, possibly.
So it's the New Blue Party of Ontario for us moving forward.
It's very exciting.
And the first goal would be to help you get reelected. And Randy Hillier, whether he runs as independent or maybe when he closes the loop there with the Ontario PC Party sitting on their riding board, it'd be great to have him run under the party banner.
Isn't that interesting? I really wish Maxime Bernier had a seat in Parliament, just one, maybe many. But without one, he's just a pundit, really. A new party with seats without seats, a new party without seats, it's an advocacy group. It has no resources, no office, no right to speak in the legislature. But imagine a party with a couple of seats. Don't laugh. The provincial Liberals only have 8. I don't know Belinda Karahalios well. Randy Hillier has been the best critic of the lockdowns in Ontario. I mean, look at this provocative but fact-based question he put the other day.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Premier. In my supplemental question yesterday, I asked this government if the people of Ontario should prepare for internment camps. In September, the federal government posted a call for expressions of interest for contractors to supply, provide and manage quarantine isolation camps throughout every province and every territory in Canada. These quarantine isolation camps, however, are not limited to people with COVID, but provide a wide latitude for many people to be detained. Surely this government is aware of the intentions to build these isolation camps from coast to coast. And my question to the Premier is, how many of these camps will be built, and how many people does this government expect to detain?
It's not a conspiracy theory. That's a question based on a procurement contract tendered by the Liberals. I can tell you, many Conservative MPPs are thinking that quarantine facilities procurement, that's nuts, that's crazy, don't go there. But not one has the courage to say it out loud. The NDP and the Liberals are lusting for it. Doug Ford's silent about it. I like the fact that Randy Hillier is talking about it. If this new party starts, even with 2 MPPs, they can raise issues that otherwise would be ignored, real issues, real questions, providing real opposition that the media party hasn't, that other opposition parties haven't, the civil liberties associations haven't, real opposition. And who knows? Maybe they would grow in number with more defections. Surely not every one of the 72 PCs love what Doug Ford is doing. Surely there is at least, I don't know, one businessman in there, or one nurse or doctor or accountant who says, you're ruining people's lives now. The lockdown is killing more than it saves. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.